Welcome to week 4 of Eco 501 sections 1 and 2. This week we're going to look at some basic concepts and we're going to look into some basic concepts of demand and supply. So let's get to the share screens. Okay, so, this is week 4, I'm sorry. Okay, so this is week 4 and fundamental concepts and demand analysis. And our textbook, as before, we haven't changed the textbook yet. Is McGuigan chapter 2, pages 28 to 62, and chapter 3 demand analysis 64 to 98. Chapter 3, we're looking at some important economics tools in managerial economics, which are demand and supply, marginal analysis, and net present value. So we first of all, we start with the concept of demand and supply. Balance of demand and supply leads to what we have termed in previous weeks as an equilibrium. An equilibrium is a situation where further change is not possible, it's not desirable. So, at a particular market price, that's the common signal for households and the sellers. If whatever is being produced in the market by all the sellers is exactly what is being demanded by all the households, then the two sides of the market, the demand by the households, supply by the sellers, these two match. Then we try to think what will happen if they don't match. We'll come to that later. Figure 2.1, page number 30. Here we have defined the text has defined demand as desired rate of purchase and supply as planned rate of sales. When we use the word desired rate, that implicitly implies or gives an indication that this is not the actual rate of purchase. When we say planned rate of sales, okay, this is not the actual sales that suppliers do on the market. The model that we're looking at is what happens if the households do what they think they want to do, their desired rate of purchase, that this is the price of the commodity, this is the time period that I have, 7 days, 1 week, or 1 month, or whatever, this is what I plan to buy. This is my desired rate of purchases. Similarly, the sellers have a similar component. They think about the desired planned rate of purchases. Okay, and now there's three possibilities. At the market price, is the quantity demanded at a particular time more than the quantity supplied at a particular time? This is the demand, this is the supply. If demand is more than supply, then definitely there is shortage in the market. People are demanding more at the price than suppliers are willing to supply at that particular price. The second possibility is this: supply is too much, demand is too low at a particular price. That means when we have quantity demanded at T, the second possibility is less than the quantity supplied at T, we have surplus in the market. The last possible case is when the two balance with each other. Okay, so two things to note is markets are probably never in equilibrium. The models predict what is expected, not what actually happens. This is one big distinction that we need to understand and appreciate, that models that we are going to use predict what will happen. They don't say actually what happens. During the class time, I'll elaborate on this more. The next thing is, what is the difference between individual market demand and market demand? The individual demand is the demand of an individual household. Market demand is the sum total of all the demands of a household. Now, in order to work out the market demand, we have to know how the individual demand acts. Based on that, we will get our, from individual demand, we will get our market demand. Now, first of all, we start with a demand function. In the last class, or in the or second week maybe, we said that we are interested in functional relationships. What are functional relationships? It's a relationship between, on your, this is your left side, this is your right side. On the right side is the independent variable. On the left side is the dependent variable. In that case, if we say this is quantity demanded, it's a function of what? Say price. So price is the independent variable, the variable that changes first. Quantity is the dependent variable, that variable that changes after the independent variable and because of the independent variable. In the previous classes, we said that if we don't make this distinction, then what will happen is that uh, we might have two events happening one after another, and we automatically will come to the decision that the first one is the independent, second was the dependent. So quantity demanded on the left is always the dependent variable. Price, in this case, will change the variable again. On the right is always the independent variable. Price changes first, quantity demanded changes after price and because of price. Now, you might say that price of a commodity is not the only variable that determines demand for X. You're correct. This is all the variables that can influence the quantity demanded for X or any other commodity. The first one is the price of the good itself. Sometimes we call it own price. Second is the price of related goods. Related goods is defined as two types: PS, the price of substitutes; PC, the price of complements. And Y is income. So if the price of a substitute goes up and down, that will influence the good that we're looking at. If the price of a complement goes up and down, that will also influence the good that we are looking at. Income is also going to influence our demand for a good. So if income increases, we start to demand certain goods. If income falls, we also start to demand certain goods. That at a low level of income, we cannot we cannot afford, say, some goods, so we go for its substitutes. Now, substitutes is defined as, if X and Y are two goods, then substitutes are defined as X or Y. Either we consume X or we consume Y, or vice versa. So if X and Y are substitutes, then the definition between the two, or the relationship between the two, is either X or Y. Either X or Y. Okay, either X or Y. That means X has an alternative use of Y. So if the price of the alternative good increases, what happens? It makes our original good more attractive now, because the substitute has increased. So our demand for the original good will increase. The reverse will happen if the price of the alternate good falls, then it makes the original good less attractive. So our demand for the original good will fall. If substitutes are defined as X or Y, complements will be defined as X and Y. We consume X and Y together. Okay, so if the price of Y increases, it's just the opposite direction now. Look at over here. Y increases, X increases. In the cases of complements, if the price of Y increases, since our income is given, so our demand for that good falls, etc. Now, with income, we do not get a definite relationship. For some goods, as income increases, our demand for those goods increase. We call these income superior goods. or normal goods. For other goods, as our income increases, our demand for those goods fall. Those are known as income inferior goods or inferior goods on their own. Now, there are other factors that influence demand, but these are the three most important. Over here in table 2.2 on page 35, we will see, for example, what happens when the price of a substitute changes, price of a complement changes, the consumer's income changes. And then we have other factors, for example, advertising, for example, increase in population. We will be discussing these during the discussion class. For the time being, you try to look at table 2.2 on page 35 and see what it says. Now, what do we define as a shift in demand? A shift in demand is when something other than the price of the commodity influences demand. Let me repeat myself again. Something other than the price of the commodity influences demand. Let's get back here. We said that the main commodity that influences our demand for a good is the commodity's price itself. Okay, so this is P. So other than the commodity's own price, what influences demand? Let's get back to this relationship. If the price of the commodity substitute increases, our demand for price of original commodity increases. The price of the original commodity has not changed. This is the original demand, D. Price of the substitute has increased. So our demand for this will increase. At the same price, we are now demanding more because the price of the substitute has increased. The reverse will also be true. When the price of the substitute falls, our demand for the original good will fall. And then what we do is we look at the individual and market supply. Supply functions are exactly the same. What does an individual supply do? What does a market supply do? So we'll stop sharing now. This is end of part one. After this, we will look at some other topics in part two. Thank you very much. Bye.